Do you have a process that you go through for arranging, like the pop tunes or any of the classical stuff, I guess?
Well, yeah, I think that the first thing I would say about when you do an arrangement, what is most important to me is that the arrangement has to sound as if it was, if somebody listened to that piece and they didn't know the original, if it was written for something for piano, or it was a string quartet piece or a choral piece or whatever, if they didn't know the original, they would have to assume that it was originally written for guitar. So that one of the really hard things in a way, well, it's not that hard to do. I find most arrangements not that hard to do. It just requires being very attentive to what you're doing. And you have what you're doing is the analogy I like to use is a sculptor sculpting a block of granite, and you keep chipping it away to get the form that you want. Mm-hmm. And you can't do too little or too much. It has to be just right. And who's to say if it's just right? Well, that's your opinion, if it's just right. And also when you play for other people, you get feedback. And especially when I was younger, I would always play with my wife is a great critic. She's a folk singer, not just folk music, but she's a singer and guitarist. She's very musical and she has a very good sense of taste. And I should really load up in the compliments because she's standing about 6 feet over in that direction right now listening to me. But she's somebody that I'll play stuff to, and friends of mine or at the job, and you will get feedback. At this point, I'd say it's fair to say I have a lot of experience doing this. So at this point in time, when I do an arrangement, from all that experience, I usually know when it's right and when it's not. But when I was younger, I would get a lot of feedback, and one of the mistakes that I made when I was younger, let's say in solo arrangements, a very typical thing, is if you're trying to get too close to the original source. There are notes, if it's a piano work and you can sort of, with a lot of effort, get like more of the notes.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean it's going to be better. Sometimes it really makes it a lot worse. It can't be awkward. It can't sound like an arrangement.
Yeah.
So that's a very important factor. I will give you, for anybody who arranges for ensemble, I've done a lot of arranging for my string quintet. The hardest arrangement that I did, which is one of the YouTube videos I have on my channel page, is the concert performance we did in San Diego of the Pavane for a Dead Princess by Ravel. That was really hard to do for this quintet, but actually it was a few years ago. We were playing a lot of special events in New York then, so I actually had these gigs where we could go in that weren't concerts, where we could actually play it and I could get the feedback from the players. I think it took 6 or 7 gigs to go to, with each time I bring in the latest revision of the arrangement. Around the 6th or 7th time, it was solid and everything. And as far as the guitar goes, what I learned is the guitar part always has to sound like a guitar part. In other words, you can't, on that piece, you can look at an orchestral score and you can say, well, you can take the cello part and a little bit of the viola part, and take that mid-range in that ensemble piece you're doing. And theoretically it's correct, you're playing the notes from the score, but if the voice leading and the sound of it doesn't, as a guitar part,
yeah,
it's not going to sound good in the piece. And that actually, when you have, in my group, on my right is the violin, there's a mandolin right here, there's the viola here, and the bass next to me on my left. The guitar is in the center. The other thing is, the guitar range goes almost as high as the violin and mandolins, and on an 8-string guitar, my low A is the same low A as the 3rd string of a double bass. And what you really need to do is, the guitar sound has to be spread out. It doesn't sound good if you just keep it in a lower register or a higher register, or just in the middle. In other words, you want the voicing and you want the range of what you're playing spread. Now that's if you're particularly in the accompaniment role or in the chamber ensemble role. Of course, you could be playing. With the group, we play the E major violin concerto, BWV 1042. Mm-hmm. And I play actually I do the violin. It's a guitar concerto now. I play the violin solo part on the guitar arrangement. You have to add some bass notes and some middle voices. It happens to be very, very effective piece. Sounds great on guitar. I know that, I know I heard years ago, I think John Williams has done that one. I think he's also done, Sharon Nisbet has done the 1041, which is the A minor violin concerto, which is a great piece. I love the middle movement of it. And I've also arranged that. We haven't performed it yet, but I've arranged it for guitar. In that case, then you're just playing the solo part. That's different.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're in the, if you're not the solo instrument in the piece, you really have to be very careful with the guitar part. The Bohemian Rhapsody, which I arranged recently, was actually the hardest solo piece I've ever worked on to arrange. It took a lot of listening. I mean, it's a little easier if there's a published score. Like there's a piano, a vocal, voice and piano part for that. Input that into your computer first because it gives you the framework. I mean, sometimes there isn't, and I have to do it all by ear. It just can take longer to do. It's easy if you have can get started with just some framework.
Mm-hmm.
And usually published piano, voice piano lead sheets, or they're usually not that accurate. So if you want to do a good arrangement from an original pop song like Bohemian Rhapsody or Stairway to Heaven, you have to then do a lot of listening to the original version. And then it's just a lot of tinkering, actually. It's just a lot of balancing it out. And again, my goal is to make it sound natural to the instrument and sound so that if somebody didn't know it, they would say it was originally written for the guitar. And whether or not you're always successful at that, you'll find out.
Yeah.
Bourbon, that's not the drink, bourbon. Of course, I'm talking about the Italian publisher, BERBEN. In the last few years, they've published arrangements I did of the Bieber, Scott Joplin rag, Sunflower Slow Drag, Tico Tico, the famous Brazilian cha-cha-cha number. And I also have a guitar arrangement of the violin part of the Bach E major violin concerto, BWV 1042, and Vivaldi's violin concerto, Opus 3, number 3, from the Lestro Armonico series, the first set of 12 concertos he published in 1711. And these will work as solo guitar pieces, or you could play them with a string quartet or chamber ensemble, mm-hmm. Without changing anything in the arrangement. And I've done, I have two other Vivaldi concertos from that set, from the Opus 3. Number 6 were in A minor, which is a very popular violin concerto, and number 9, also a very popular violin concerto. And number 3 and number 9 were also, the inspiration I had for those was the arrangements that Bach did for solo keyboard. And those, there are Bach arranged, I think it was 11 Vivaldi concertos for harpsichord or clavier, and I think it was 6 for the organ. And you can get those, Dover Publications has published, it's the keyboard music Bach arranged from other composers. There's a Marcello in there, a number of other composers.
So how do you pick pieces that you want to arrange? Pop or art music?
I do that by either having heard the original and liked it and wondered if it would work. That's mm-hmm. a fair amount of times that happens. Very often people, when I'm performing, either in the hotel gigs that I've had or a private party or a concert, either solo concert or with my group, sometimes people come up backstage afterwards and they'll say, have you ever arranged such and such a piece? And very often I've looked up the piece, and very often if somebody requests it, it usually is a good piece and very often will work. And the other thing that I do, which I've always enjoyed a lot, it used to be by going to the library, now you can do it on the internet a lot, is just reading through music. There's the Icking site. I'm sure you know that site, ICKING. People will go to a site like that to look for arrangements to play, And you can also go to a site and see what people have done already. And again, as an 8-string guitarist, it's very likely that in a lot of arrangements, I'll want to do my own version just because there's bass notes that I can add, or you do your own take on the piece. You know, I mean, if you take the music of Isaac Albéniz, there's a lot of people who have arranged Asturias, also known as Leander. You know, there's a lot of ways to go that, or Granada, or any of those pieces. So I have a lot of music at home. I always go to the library. I've always loved just having a great day for me. It's just having a stack of music, like this right next to me. You just take all this music, you know, and sit there and read for hours. And then you come across things that you want to do and you arrange it.